Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this online presentation called Adapting Curriculum on Demand. And we are pleased to have Renay Marquez with us this evening to talk about ways to adapt the curriculum for your learners in your classrooms, whether it's inclusive or whether it's a self-contained special education classroom. We're talking about ways to help your learners access the curriculum. And Renay is the person to teach us and to talk to us about it tonight, because she has been a paraeducator adapting curriculum for the last 12 years. She is a paraeducator in California and is also creator of the website www.paraeducate.com. And she has 4 books that she's written on adapting curriculum, and plus 1 book that she has co-authored on training paraeducators. So I'd like to welcome her this evening. We're thankful for her time and her expertise. And if you stay tuned in till the very end, Renay has some resources to share with you, and enjoy. I will pass the mic, so to speak, over to Renay. Thanks, Renay.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've been coming around. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch to sharing my computer screen with y'all, so you can see the presentation. Oh, look, it even popped up for me. All right, Nicole, can you see that right now?
Yes, I can.
Great.
Thank you.
Here we go. So academic adaptations start really easy and very early on. In education, adaptations are just very little things that we can do to make students comfortable, actually, in the classroom and let them know that they can do the stuff that's in the class. We don't have to do them all the time, and it depends on the student. According to IDA 2004, we should be doing this. And I'll show you some research later that proves that general ed teachers and special education teachers currently are not, even though they can be. Adaptations, really good adaptations, don't single out students necessarily, and only go as far as the student needs them to be. And this is probably really more important at the secondary level, not so important at the kindergarten level, but we're trying to come up with a way, especially to make an adaptation less stigmatizing for a student. When you want to start, you really want to believe that all your students are going to do the work and the adaptations that you want. You really believe in your students, general ed, special ed, the paraeducators, and you're going to tap into many resources on campus. One of those resources are their classmates. I cannot tell you how many times that a classmate has convinced a student to go ahead with the worksheet, even though they're a little worried about the worksheet. So there's two big pieces to making an adaptation. There's accommodations and there's modifications. Accommodations include scribes, they include books on tape, CD, now through Bookshare, or the audio text that Kindle offers. They aren't great. They're not changing what the student is being held to. All the students in the class are going to read Call of the Wild. Well, we're just going to listen to Call of the Wild being read to us, but that doesn't mean that we won't attempt the same level of questions that are provided to us by the teacher. Modifications, however, definitely come through the IEP. Accommodations may come through the IEP as well, but modifications have to be in the IEP. And this will change completely the level and the expectation that a student may accomplish. Yes, the class may be reading Call of the Wild, but my student gets a sheet that has pictures of wolves and dogs, and we're just learning the difference that Buck is not a wolf, he is a dog, and he goes through and he becomes a sled dog at one point. So we're just going to follow the path of the story, but we're not actually going to read the story. We might even look up differences between dogs and wolves, but we're not going to spend a lot of time doing that with that student. So things we'll also find in the IEP a lot. These are top 4 that I find. I almost want to add a 5th is scribing. Scribing is a student telling someone else what to write. Sometimes the scribe, particularly paraeducators, will ask clarifying questions if it's not a test. For the general ed teachers that are watching this, there's a lot. Sometimes I get some pushback, especially at high school level, because they have a student who may not have viewed as being appropriate for their class placement, and they're not able to achieve as far as they want the goal for the entire class. But the opportunity that their class provides to get the academic diversity that occurs in learning it from different modalities, from different classes, just to be able to be interested in something. Maybe a student has had an interest in horses. Your campus has an ag program, and even though there may not be horses on campus, the student can see the way pigs and goats are raised on a farm, or even within the ag department. It means that the student will connect to the general ed material as it's presented. Another component that a lot of people tend to forget sometimes are students with anxiety, and these are the student typically, and especially since I'm working with some, the students who seem to be awesome students. They want to be in the classroom, they're totally engaged, they answer questions, and then you send them away with homework or you take them to a testing situation that completely fall apart on you. We recognize in academics that that's probably not very healthy, that they need to have some downtime, or they need to be able to access the curriculum slightly differently. And just giving them that ability to take a deep breath and say, oh, I know how to answer this, it makes a huge difference. And finally, also, this is most recently too for me, I had to actually demonstrate to a general ed teacher that I was engaging a student, and the student was making choices about academic material to them, to the teacher. And the teacher had never worked with that student before, had not known how to understand that the student's voice was available in their work, and now that teacher does and knows how to ask that student. This is the funny part, and this is where I always laugh. And every year when I've shown this in a training, every paraeducator in the room goes, "I do adaptations, I do modifications. No one's helped me, no one's trained me." And the rule of the law of the land, especially in California, because it is written directly into Ed Code in the state of California, that special education teachers or general education teachers should be the only ones doing adaptations and modifications. And everyone kind of laughs and we move on. So how do paraeducators end up doing this? Well, the ones who are really trained or who have been mentored through by other paraeducators or who have been mentored through by special education teachers, we're working on a team approach. We aren't just going off and deciding which things our students should do. We are talking to the general ed teachers and getting their input. We are informing the general ed teacher when something just didn't work. It's not just about heading off problems for students who have difficulty with academics. It's about encouraging the student at some points to understand that there's limits all around. You don't just go off and do a modification without telling a general ed teacher, because they're doing the grading and they'll want to see it later, see the paper later. And paraeducators get burned out doing modifications. Modifications are time consuming. On average, in a year, for one class, I put in a week, probably 20 hours. I get paid for 18 hours a week. No, sorry, I take that back. I get paid for 40 hours a week, and I do another 20 on top of that. So I do recognize they take a lot of time. Not every paraeducator should do academic modifications. And if you put up a routine with your general ed teacher or your special education teacher, that'll help take off some of that those times that you have to work through them. And it helps the special education teacher to have a better idea of how many more man hours they actually need in a week. Part of that team approach, one way we've used, we go to the general ed teacher and say, we've got Unit 4 coming up. What 10 vocabulary words do you think are the most important out of that unit? Or what are the 3 to 4 main ideas that you would like all your students to really walk away with? And demonstrate. You might need to give a little give and take here, particularly with the student and how they access the curriculum. And then you can go away, or you can take the materials to the special ed teacher and decide how you're going to make those materials at all possible for the student in question. You're paying attention, particularly if you need to get real world pictures, if you need to spend 20 minutes on a Google search to find images that would relate better to the science topic or to the history topic. You need to get in and maybe build a board for the AAC for your student. And the other thing is, part of that, when you develop the materials, you want to be able to reference it again in the future. I'll talk more about that in a little bit later. And so team approaches to your adaptations, again, involve the paraeducator, the general ed teacher, and the special education teacher or the case manager of the student. So you're going to start really easy by observing the classroom, how the teachers work with the students, and where you're going, usually through the syllabus for secondary. All of those observations, probably per unit, would take about a week. And you really don't want to spend too much more time than that, because particularly in some cases, you don't have that much turnaround for each unit. You really want to be proactive and make sure that the general ed teacher is aware of the needs of your students. Remind them very gently, hey, did you read Johnny's face sheet or his IEP at a glance recently? It's changed since last year. So I want you to be able to help him get a lot out of your history class today. This is also where the case manager will come in and say, I assigned you Mary this year, and Mary went to law school, and she's not working as a lawyer right now because she still has kids at home, but Mary will really want to be a part of your class when you start talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. And I think that'll be a really good match for not just my student who needs her to be in that class to help him access the curriculum and the social skills, but for all the students. And get into routines. Every day there's a warm-up. Every day the students will listen collectively to a read aloud out of the unit that they're studying from for math. Let the teachers know that this particular student doesn't do well with long answer questions, long essay questions, but we're working on our way up to maybe a paragraph response. And or in the middle of the year, we've noticed that this student is doing really well, and I think we can drop the modifications. Or the student's having some real health problems right now. I think we need to go have some less demands here in this class, not just this class, but all of them, and make sure that we're able to keep meeting the students' needs where they're meeting us right now. And just letting the general teacher know all of those things, and just constantly in communication and revising as you go along. This is one of my favorite tools. This 9 chart explains the things that we need to do to get our students to demonstrate they are interested in the work that they're doing. There are 9 different ways to change academics so that student can meet it. A lot of the time, we tend to think of only input and output. There are ways to just take down the size and the scope, make sure the students have calculators, make sure that the student could listen to it on tape. And the bottom 2, modified goal and the substitute curriculum, really need an IEP goal written in. If you notice that your student who hadn't really needed a lot of modification suddenly has tanked, and redirect, mention it in the IEP, mention it before the IEP, mention it to the case manager, just so you know, so they know, and see if they can work on either helping that student or realizing maybe the student's just having a hard time at this moment. And this is just a temporary way to get the student to understand the concepts. The other point, time. More time on all assignments, particularly large projects. Not my favorite modification adaptation ever. Secondary students, teenagers, all teenagers, majority of teenagers, love to take more time if they can have it. Not a realistic goal all the time, sadly. It's great when it works out. It's great, not so great when the students, oh, I've got more time. Like, no, you don't. Sorry, bud. That's not how we treat this. I'd like you to try to get as much done. One last one I really focus on. It's a very easy way to build in a student is the degree of participation. Had a student who was petrified of dissections. And I had to convince the student to get into the science classroom anyway during the dissection time. The only way I could convince the student was to hand off my phone and say, here, take photos of all of the dissection things as they go along. And apparently that separated the student enough physically, thankfully. When the student went into the class, the student took all sorts of pictures. And then I was able to send those pictures to the science teacher, and the science teacher agreed the student had participated in the dissections that day. Paraeducators carry an insane amount of stuff in their bag of tricks. These are the easiest, lightest materials I've found over time. The sheet protector, if you put in a regular blank sheet of paper and you write on the sheet protector with your whiteboard marker, got an instant whiteboard, and you don't have to worry about breaking a whiteboard in your backpack. Whiteout tape or a pen or any sort of whiteout that you carry with you. Many students object to having sections of their worksheets or their workbooks cut out or blacked out. Whiteout seems to magically make that objection go away. I've also had to go out and photocopy and move space to move those same worksheet pages or workbooks. So now I'm going to start talking about specifics you can do with students of any ability level and in specific subjects. So I've got, for an ELA, we had students just look at the book, especially if they have a textbook in an English class. It's not so useful, especially for the students as they get older, if they're reading from an actual novel. But going through and just flipping through the book or flipping through the section that they're reading to look for things that interest them or things that they notice. And actually getting a couple of the students who are more capable or more able to ask their peers, what things did you choose that you found interesting? And it doesn't matter the age group of this activity. It's built in naturally. A lot of teachers do, like, let's flip through this book. Let's see what we can find. It's pretty natural. It's not a stretch. The only thing that might come up is, well, they were talking. It's like, well, no, but they were still talking on topic, and they were talking specifically about the reading that we are going to do. Math. On the left, we have a modified worksheet. The student needed less problems and it needed a scaffolding to be able to do these problems. I happen to know this particular worksheet was also done by a student who was using a calculator, and so it's scaffolded all the way through. On the right, I have an ice cube tray, and then we've put down numbers on it. And the student's activity for this class, for math class, was to roll a die and then put a corresponding number in the tray. This was actually 2 dice instead. And I know in Common Core right now, 10 frames are all the rage. And so it's not too hard of a stretch to shift the numbers on the ice cube tray to get a 10 frame. I do still encourage, however, that you make it to 12. 12 is a great number. I still need to get a dozen donuts, a dozen eggs, and there are 12 months out of the year. So 10 frames are great for adding and subtracting early on. 12 is very useful anyway because we're still going to use them. Other things math, this same student who was working on the ice cube tray, I wouldn't have left all of these icons here for that student to use at the same time. We were working our way up to this number. But even for kindergartners, being able to say this month, last month, next month, around circle time is pretty important, and just to the class in general. And this was helping that student learn to associate those things together. I've actually received a lot of information recently that history and science seem to be the classes that are avoided the most for modifications, and I'm a little frightened by that because so many students say that they love science or they love history and they're just not able to get to it. And these are notes. These are Cornell style notes. These notes were created in one class by a paraeducator and modified and printed and provided to the student to put into their notebook. On the left, we have blanks. So the student, as the teacher would talk, would find the section that the teacher had written up on the board, and they could copy down the notes, just so they were engaged. The one on the right is more for a student who probably doesn't have as much writing skill, either because they needed notes provided to them or were working on our listening skills and we would have asked that student to, as the teacher says those words, can you highlight them? Or as the teacher writes them up on the board, can you highlight them? This is my favorite bit of science. I had a student a few years ago, and he loved cartoons. He had a series of cartoons. He had several different cartoons that the student loved. And the aide he was working with loved to draw. So the aide would go in and draw the student's favorite cartoon characters and embed science curriculum with him. And the student was 100% engaged with his aide, and did honestly learn science that year. Loves science to this day. This is a modified test. You can tell that some things were crossed off, and then when the student ran into there were two different ways that the science topic was being taught, and so we provided one way that the science topic was being taught. We continued on, and the aide went in, wrote in some keys to help that student focus their attention on actually solving for the thing that they were looking for. PE. Nobody thinks that there's going to be any modifications for PE. Turns out there are going to be a few, especially secondary. Secondary tends to be more about, did you understand the rules and how does the human body work in terms of actual physical activity. So we came through, we created a slide deck of muscles and a flashcard deck, and the student could review them before the test. And that student was highly sought after by all the students in the class because they realized if they could pair up with that student, they could get review time with that student over the muscles test that they had later that week. Here are two examples of history. On the right, we have a history test. And the history test, it just asks this particular student to circle, but it's set up in a way that a student we had later could, when we provided the test, could point to mark. On the right, these were the three main words that a student needed to label on a map. And they were getting used to, they had an IEP goal of handwriting. And so they were just given the 3 words they needed for the unit. Adapting for the future. It is all too easy to do a binder paper out for you and writing a couple of things spaced out well for your student and highlighting the important information. And then that piece of paper either goes away to the teacher, comes back, gets lost in the student's desk, gets crunched in their backpack, and you'll never know what you did to help that student be successful when you have a similar student 2 or even 3 years later. There are many things that are worth modifying in the spot on the moment. Warm-ups tend to be my favorite to modify on the spot. I never keep those because I know that with some variation every year they change enough that I don't really find an investment in that. But there are many other aides who put a lot of investment into the warm-up and how students can access that. I tend to focus a lot on projects. I tend to focus a lot on unit work. And the other thing is teaching all the staff. There's a lot of turnover in paraeducators. I tend to be an oddball. I've been here for 12 years. Teaching all the staff to check in. There is a file cabinet in the department I work at, and that's where we put all of our work for modification. And I know now, having worked there for a year, to go over there and check it out and and find adapted books, all of adapted materials. And I know that I can ask for the case managers who are pretty much right there if that might be an appropriate use of that material for a specific student. The last component is sharing with other campuses. Schools, individual schools, love it when you have a gold mine, and they love to keep it secret. Or they'll say things in district-wide meetings. Oh yeah, we've got this great thing. It's working out well for this student who used to be at this other school, and they kind of smile and shrug. And when I ask sometimes what it really was, what it's academically related, they tend to pause and say, "Yeah, we've got this thing. We've got these 3 things," and they'll show me like pieces of it, and I'm like, "Why isn't it at our campus?" Well, because Nick made it up the last week, and it's been working really great. And he made it up last year. And can I get a copy of it? No, we really need to share. The education community is really about communication. General ed teachers and special ed teachers and paraeducators all benefit when we work together on this. And if you're still not convinced, research currently supports adaptations. For the last several years, we're meeting students' needs. We need to help our students with severe disabilities to get into our general ed material, to be a part of their campus, to be seen, to be heard, and to be honored that they too can too participate. Before I close out here, I would just like to let you know, it's Renay Marquez with ParaEducate. We have those 5 books. ParaEducate is a book that talks about training paraeducators. We have 2 books just highlighting vocabulary words and activities that can be done in science and in government classes. And finally, our last 2 books are Adapted Curriculum, The Bard and Stick Figures. It's 3 stories from Shakespeare, drawn in stick figures, written for some students I had a few years back who really wanted to read the Shakespeare plays that we were reading, but really couldn't access the material. And then finally, I have a book on world geography and placement and how those things work in land masses. We are all over the internet. We have our weekly blog that comes out every Thursday. We're on Twitter, we're on Pinterest. Some of our materials are smaller materials we make available for purchase at Teachers Pay Teachers and Teacher's Notebook. All our books can be found on Amazon. All right, so I am going to go back out to the Hangout, and hopefully there are questions.
Hi, Renay. Thank you so much for all of that information. It's so helpful. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you because there doesn't really seem to be a lot of clear information on modification strategies. I mean, there's a lot of theory and there's a lot of research around it, but to actually see some of it in real life, so to speak, is very helpful. So thank you. Now, unfortunately, I haven't been able to coordinate this chat box to find out if people have questions. So I've actually come up with a few myself, and hopefully if people have questions, they can either put them on Facebook on my page, or they can put them on Renay's Facebook page, or email me at theinclusiveclass at gmail.com. So does that work for you, Renay? I have a few general
that completely works for me, and we'll answer the questions online and put them out.
Yeah, sounds great. I guess one of the things that I was thinking about is, and I've had this happen before, because you're a seasoned paraeducator. What happens, what is your role between the teacher and the parent? And in terms of letting the parent know what you're doing with the curriculum versus the teacher letting the parent know, like, how do you navigate that whole relationship? This is kind of outside of modifying, but
so most districts and even outside the state of California, they tell the paraeducator you are allowed to say hello, you are allowed to say goodbye, and you're allowed to smile and talk about the weather. Those are the 4 things you're allowed to talk to the parents about.
okay.
My district's a little bit more open. I'm fortunate in that regard. But I am a non-entity. I am not allowed. I'm not supposed to be doing curriculum modifications. But again, because I am working with the general education teacher and the case manager, I'm not just deciding to doodle on the side and go off on my own.
And how often do you meet with the classroom teacher to decide?
Meetings are a very interesting topic. They aren't formal, and that's usually surprises parents. You don't actually, general ed teachers honestly and don't have the time. So you're going to do it before class, you're going to do it after class. You might do it when you're running in the halls as they've brought the materials to the class, and you go, is that sulfuric acid this week?
Yep. And so in terms of knowing what your students' goals are, do you get a copy of the IEP, or do you just get that information?
Yeah, in California, you can easily ask for it, and you should be provided with IEPs at a glance. Everyone who is actively involved in the academic year, so this does not mean substitutes necessarily, actively involved in the academic year of that student on the campus should get a copy of either the IEP at a glance or some other base sheet that describes the student that's provided by the case manager.
Okay, good. And this is one that I struggle with because I see it used intermingled all the time. And I can't recall if you had addressed this at the beginning of your presentation, but you see the word modification, and so now we know what that is. But then we also see adaptation and accommodation. Can you explain adaptation and accommodation?
So adaptations are kind of like just anything we do in academics that changes the way academics look. But specifically to an accommodation means that there's something that's different that student really needs, as opposed to absolutely needs, which is a modification.
Okay. So an adaptation is just how we present the material, what we're giving the students according to their needs. An accommodation is taking that extra step and facilitating access to the material.
Yeah.
And the modification is changing the goals altogether. Would that be correct?
Modification would be provided with specific goals.
Yeah, right. According to the IEP.
Yes.
Right. And then what about, can you recommend, you've obviously got a fabulous website, your books are awesome. You talked a lot about sharing, and I completely agree with you. And I think even as teachers, we have that problem where we've found, the secret to success in our classroom, and yet sometimes we're not willing to share that, whether we lack confidence in it or for whatever reason. But is there anywhere else online that our viewers can go to and find resources for adapting and modifying curriculum? Do you have any other?
Separate from they tend to be actually modified curriculum ready to go. Setbc.org actually is great. Bookshare really is good. We had one out of Virginia Tech for a while. I don't know if they're still there. And all they provide materials, but you have to go looking through it and to find what's going to work best for you.
Right.
That's why I started spending so much time trying to figure out ways and have made ways that I don't have to go searching for this anymore. I've got three different ways that I can present this for any possible silly situation that comes up. And we're just going to go to it. And I still might have to something, but...
Sorry to interrupt. I love the idea of having kind of like a toolkit, an adaptation and modification toolkit, because I think even a teacher could have that as well, sitting, you know, in our desk or on the desk or in the classroom somewhere, that there's materials collected in a little baggie or a little tote bag, and you don't have to go searching for it, and it just makes things a lot easier as you're presenting lessons. So I thought that was a really great tip that you gave. And I think even maybe, you know, a student could have something like that in their backpack and carry it with them, especially if they're going from class to class, or, you know, if the paraeducator is away that day, or the teacher, that there's some materials in there that the student can have to use. So I think that was a great idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
And one last question. Do you have any apps that you like to use, any sort of technology related?
Most recently found, I actually even have it on the phone right now. Oops, hold on. Yeah, come on, go away. It's SnapType. I've been using that a lot. Megan Groats, associate of mine, found it and is using it. It's free. They do have a paid version. SnapType allows you to take a picture of a worksheet, and you can immediately either choose to type on the worksheet for the student who might have an iPad and use that, or you can block out sections automatically on the worksheet and then present the iPad to the student, or email the picture, the new picture PDF, to a printer and get it picked up. The emailing only works if you have printers on your campus that accept that sort of device, but Snapchat currently is available, I believe, also on Android. You'd have to check with them.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. And like I said, if our viewers have anything more that Renay or myself haven't addressed this evening, please feel free to contact us on Twitter. I'm at inclusive_class, and Renay is at ParaEducate. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe that's where you're at. Okay, and of course, Facebook and our blogs, ParaEducate and the Inclusive Class. You can contact us there. Renay, any other pieces of advice or any tips before we close out tonight?
No, not really. Just enjoy your academic school year.
Yeah, that's right. Some of us have just started. Some of us have already been in there for the last couple of weeks. So yeah, some are coming up soon. I know my son doesn't start till the end of September. So anyway, thank you very much to all of our viewers for watching, and thank you very much, Renay, for the time and effort that you put into putting this presentation together for us. It's so very useful, and please make sure, if you're watching, to follow us on social media for more ideas and advice and resources and conversation. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night. Thanks, Renay.
Welcome.